Hello and welcome to week 7 of EDU 507. This will be our last recording for the course, and this is also the last week with discussion boards. So our focus this week is reframing how we think about our students. How can we encourage other adults in our educational spaces to make this internal shift? And regulation. Change, not damage. That is something that Sowers and Hall talk about. Key in on that. Supporting ourselves to support our students. Go back to your mantra. Modeling regulation for and with our students. The learning objectives are explain how forever changed, not forever damaged, is an appropriate mantra for educators designing learning environments and experiences for children who have experienced trauma. We're going to work on articulating a perspective on how classroom teachers might best teach resilience to themselves and learners. And explain the view that suggests that behind every challenging behavior is an unsolved problem or a lagging skill, or both, and how to enact such a perspective as a classroom teacher. This week, you're going to watch this video. You're going to read Sowers and Hall, parts 4 and 5, and Ross Green, Kids Do Well If They Can, as well as completing the discussion board learning activities and getting a head start on your final assignment. The two discussion boards for this week. Consider the Ross Green article. When you were in school, what language was used to describe atypical students? How did your teachers manage such students? And as a trauma-informed teacher, describe the connection between the language we use and the actions we take. What role does language play for you in your trauma-informed practice? And discussion board number 2. Examine the role of vulnerability in a trauma-informed classroom. How might a teacher effectively model vulnerability? And how should a teacher teach the value of vulnerability and foster this value in a classroom community? Analyze the connection between vulnerability and resilience. And please remember to respond to 2 peers. This is our last set of discussion boards for the semester. So if you are still missing any points from previous discussion boards, you have until this Saturday to complete them. Thinking ahead to assignment 4. This is a presentation to a school board. You are going to make some type of presentation, Prezi, PowerPoint, Canva, etc. And you are going to record yourself giving the presentation. Please make sure that I can see both you and your presentation, and that it fits in with all of the guidelines of the assignment. That is one of them, that it has both a visual and audio component. I have had individuals turn something in with no audio, so please make sure to double check that your audio works and that you can get a recording. You're going to provide, so the purpose is to synthesize everything you have learned about building a trauma-informed classroom. You're going to provide a substantive and persuasive presentation to a school board advocating for a trauma-informed approach or approaches in the classroom. Make sure you look at the details in the syllabus. The situation is that this hypothetical school, a parent advocacy group, has recently been attending school board meetings and loudly protesting the high suspension and expulsion data in your district. Remember, this is a hypothetical school. It's not necessarily your district. So imagine a school that has these problems and what they are currently probably using in the classroom for trauma-informed practices. The school board has directed the school administration to identify possible alternative approaches to suspensions and expulsions. Your principal knows that you embrace trauma-informed teaching practices and arranges for you to prepare a presentation to the school board describing a trauma-informed approach. Remember, you get 10 minutes at the microphone. So keep it under 10 minutes. The slideshow should be 15 to 18 slides. I suggest practicing it once or twice before you record. Include 5 or more peer-reviewed sources. Cite them on the slide, and make sure you include a reference on the last slide. You don't need to read the references either as in-text citations or on the last page. You just want them there so that if the school board / me are reviewing your work afterwards, we can see where things came from. It's not something that you have to say, well, in this idea from so-and-so during your presentation. You can, but you do not have to read your in-text citations or the reference page. You just have to show that you do have a reference page. and make sure that the citations throughout the presentation are in APA format. This would include images. You're going to give the background, pervasiveness, and impact of childhood trauma. Discuss the role and importance of educator mindset, agency, and self-awareness in supporting trauma-impacted students. Include an analysis of the current practices. Again, you're going to make some assumptions here, so you may want to look into some research on things that are currently in place or have been in place that lead to the problems they're having, which, to remind you, are high suspensions and expulsions. So when you're reading the research, what are practices that tend to lead to that? And why or how they do not align with trauma-informed principles. Describe an effective trauma-informed classroom practice or practices. You can talk about a whole bunch here, but remember, you only have 10 minutes. Address academic, social, and cultural practices in this area. So how are we going to not only decrease the suspensions and expulsions, I just tried to combine those into one word, but also address the academic, social, and cultural needs of our students? And how will that help? Suggestions for concrete steps the school board can take in supporting current and emerging trauma-informed educational spaces. So this would kind of be the last hurrah of your presentation. These are the things that the school board could do today or put in place for next school year that will improve the school. Thank you so much for a wonderful semester. I've greatly appreciated having all of you as students. A reminder, if you have late work, please get it in by Saturday, the 28th at midnight, so that I have time to grade it. If you feel like you are so far behind that there is no way you can catch up, please work with your academic advisor on an extension. They can walk you through that process. My question for you this week is, what has been your biggest takeaway from this course? And I hope everybody has a great week. And again, thank you all for the great semester.